Anybody who thinks I'm doing this for fun is out of their minds, because I get so much vicious backlash. You have seen it. Some people actually hate me. It's so crucial to do this. It's absolutely not scandal mongering. Some people think that too. Oh, you just want to spread scandal and rumor monger. No, absolutely not.
Right.
We love the church. We desire to see the church reformed and purified and purged of the filth. And you can't do that unless you first expose the filth. Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Oh,
and
that's good.
we've seen, results. We've seen real world results from some of the media exposure that there are stories now that we're covering, like for instance, SSPX, that nobody else in the Catholic world is willing to touch. But someone's got to do it. Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to take the backlash for it and all the hatred and all that stuff. Because believe me, we take it. But for the sake of the victims and for the sake of the church that we love, for Holy Mother Church, it's got to be done.
Right. No, that's great, because I've really thought that too. It's like those are sordid stories, things that are really hard to even talk about. Most people are just uncomfortable with, so of course they don't want to jump in there if they don't have to. But you guys do that, and it's like it's needed, even though it doesn't make you necessarily popular, but it's a niche that needs to be filled. And I feel like you guys are really brave to be stepping up and doing that. Speaking out.
I wish my colleagues in the Catholic media would step up and do this, because people ask us, they're like, okay, so why do you go after the SSPX? Well, the first thing I say is I go after anyone. I mean, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're in the Novus Ordo Church or if you're trad. If you're abusing children, if you're abusing vulnerable adults, you're going to be exposed. If you're covering it up, you're going to be exposed. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you wear a rainbow stole or fiddleback chasuble. I don't care. And the problem is there are too many people in Catholic media today who do care. They align themselves with a particular tribe, and because it's their tribe, they refuse to expose it. And I'm not going to name any names because these people know who they are, and I've called them out for it before, but it's sheer hypocrisy. It's sheer hypocrisy. It's like you've got the trad group, and I go to the traditional Latin Mass. This is not attacking traditionalism, but I've just seen it too much in the whole traditionalist world, where they're more than happy to trash and go after the Novus Ordo bishops and the clergy because they're doing sex abuse and covering it up, and yet they will be completely silent about the stuff going on in their own ranks.
Oh,
it drives me absolutely nuts. It's hypocritical. It's a double standard. As far as I'm concerned, if you have a public platform and you are refusing to call out the abuse and cover-up going on in some of these trad communities, because it's not just the SSPX, there are others as well. If you're like a big trad platform and you've got a big voice, and yet you refuse to use it to denounce the abuse and the cover-up, then as far as I'm concerned, you are complicit. You're taking part in it. You're helping. You're enabling it. And unfortunately, that's going on, with some of my colleagues in the media, in the trad media, that's going on. But at Church Militant, we don't play favorites. You can't do that. And I say this all the time. You cannot place tribe over truth. Truth has to come first, always. And there have been stories of priests that I have exposed that it was painful for me to write the report or do the report, because I didn't want to, because maybe it was part of a community that I really liked. Like for instance, the FSSP. I went to many FSSP parishes. My children were baptized in the FSSP. I have friendships with FSSP priests. And so I didn't want to write a report on Father James Jackson and the child porn accusation. I didn't want to. It was painful for me. But you know what? You have to. If you're going to be a journalist with any sort of integrity, you have to. He wasn't the only one. There are other trad priests as well that I've written about, that with pain in my heart as I wrote it, because I realized, wow, this is someone that I knew, and yet here he's doing this, and I've got to write on it, because otherwise it's hypocritical for me not to.
Oh, that is really hard. I mean, does that ever make you feel bitter? I mean, have you been able to kind of deal with it well enough? So it's like, obviously you love the church and you're very devoted and you're doing this because you feel like you have to, but it's not, does it kind of spoil things for you or make you just kind of like jaded?
Yeah, people ask me that question. I've never become bitter or jaded towards the church. I know some people do become very bitter and jaded towards the church, and I certainly don't blame them if they're victims, especially. But I've never become bitter or jaded. And I think part of it is it does require a certain constitution to do the work that I do. Just like it requires a certain sort of constitution to be like a surgeon, or
Yeah.
and cut people open, which I could never do, or be an EMT where you're on the scene at horrific accidents and you're helping people and they're, who are bleeding on the street. I could never do that. But some people can do that. They just have the constitution to be able to do that. And I have the constitution to be able to dive deep into these investigations, look at some very sordid, horrible things, and still be able to deal with it without getting jaded or bitter.
Yeah.
And part of that too is just you have to have a deep prayer life. You have to have a close relationship with God, and you have to keep your focus on the long view, on the eternal truths and why you're doing this. It's ultimately to help purify the church. And maybe it's the case that you're not even going to see the results in your lifetime. It could be that maybe in the next lifetime, you'll see some results. But you're trying to move the ball down the field a little bit. And I don't let it really discourage me. Now, sometimes I can feel like we're facing this tsunami of evil, and how do we stand against it? Because it does seem like there's this huge tidal wave of evil. Like just from the world feels like all hell is breaking loose. And it kind of feels that way in the church sometimes as well. But I always remind myself, this got to focus on Christ alone. Can't place my faith in any man. I don't care who it is or how, devout or pious the particular cleric is.
Yeah.
You can't place your faith in the Pope. You place your faith in Christ alone and trust his promise when he says, he established his church. On this rock, I shall build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. That's Christ's promise, and Christ doesn't lie. And so his church will never be overrun, ever.
But I mean, this work has brought you under personal attack and even threats, right? I mean, you don't get, benefits from it really, other than spiritual, right?
The benefits that I get are from the victims and their families. Those mean more to me than anything, because a number of times after I air these reports, I will get notes of gratitude, sometimes tearful messages from either the victims or their families saying, thank you so much for doing this. You're the first person who has listened. You are the first one to give us a voice and a platform. Thank you so much. And a lot of them find healing in that. And so for me, when I get a single note like that, it makes up for everything. It makes up for all the backlash and all the attacks and everything, just getting a single note, knowing that I've helped a victim or their family. That's all that matters as far as I'm concerned. And also helping to clean up the church as well.